think anything is possible for anyone. It really, really is. Like whatever fitness goal you have is for sure possible. It's a matter of how much time it's going to take. Are you willing to actually like be patient with the process and follow through with it? And I think that's the biggest thing.
All right, I would like to introduce my guest, Patrick Wilson. With a wealth of experience and expertise in the world of fitness, Patrick has dedicated his time to helping individuals achieve their health and wellness goals. From training programs to his motivational coaching style, Patrick has empowered countless individuals to transform their lives through fitness. Join us as we delve into Patrick's unique approach to training, his top tips for staying motivated, and his passion for inspiring others to lead an active and healthy lifestyle. Patrick, welcome. Thank you so much for coming on. And I just want to ask you, how did you get to where you are today and what inspired your journey in fitness?
First, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you. It means a lot. Two, that's a loaded question, a lot of different parts, but I'll try to summarize it as best as and as quickly as possible. So, first things first, I grew up playing basketball, loved playing. And then when I stopped playing, I realized I needed something to do to occupy my time. And I knew that like I wanted to kind of stay in shape. And so first thing that I kind of gravitated towards, and I always kind of liked it just from playing basketball, you always are like lifting weights and like working out and kind of working on those different things. So started lifting weights when I stopped playing basketball. So kind of developed a passion for that kind of transition from basketball over to the lifting side of things. And then I always grew up like a big time foodie. Like my mom always took me on different trips and she would always have me trying a whole lot of different foods. And then as I got into college, obviously you're like also drinking and like having like going out and having like drunk food later at night. So I was like trying to figure out, I was like, how can I make progress losing fat and like having my body look better, but still like do all of these things that I want to do as far as like going out, traveling, having tasty food? Like, how does it all work? And so kind of did it on my own, researched a ton about just like what leads to fat loss, like how can I lose fat? What should I be focusing on? And then after I got my degree in finance, actually, and then once I was working my finance job, I did a little bit of training at the gym when I was in college. Um, and so kind of had that background, but I never really thought anything would come from it as far as like doing an actual career, like business related around fitness. So got my degree in finance, was working a finance job. And I remember every single day going into that job, I was like, I wish I could do something with fitness and like help people with, the stuff that I actually am really passionate about. And I always realized and kind of saw that in the fitness and nutrition space, no one really talked about how to like balance out going out and going and getting food and like traveling and doing all this stuff while still making progress. And I was like, I feel like I should talk about that and help people with that side of things. So honestly, just started posting about like how I went about it and like the main things that you should focus on to lose fat. And then, obviously it's a journey and any kind of business and brand kind of takes time to grow, but that's really what it was based around. It's like wanting to help people and let people know that it's possible to make progress and still enjoy your life and enjoy your time. And it doesn't have to be just this one thing or another, an all or nothing kind of approach that I think a lot of us have when it comes to nutrition and fitness side of things.
Yeah, and I want to pick your brain more on that. What do you think are like the key components of like a well-rounded fitness routine and diet? Because I feel like your approach is a lot more doing what works for you, not going overboard. Can you get more into that?
Yeah. So I think oftentimes people do what they think is ideal to make progress. And I think people think that like 5 days per week, 6 days per week working out and like completely cutting out carbs or cutting out sugars or cutting out alcohol is like ideal and what they should do to make progress. And they might be able to do that. People might be able to do that for, a week, 2 weeks, a month, a couple months. But is that something you're actually going to do long term? Probably not. And so I think kind of meeting people where they are with what their life kind of is looking like at that point in time. Like I've worked with clients and make content that kind of helps people that are working a full-time job, they're going through school, they have kids, they have all these other responsibilities, and you can't be in the gym 6 days a week for an hour and a half every single time. You can't like eat perfectly healthy all the time, nor do people like necessarily want to. And so that was always my thing. And what I try to help people with is like, you don't have to be perfect and do these like super ideal things to make progress. It's more like, let's focus on these like main kind of basic foundational things, getting in 3 workouts per week, kind of being mindful of total calories, kind of cutting back on stuff where you can, kind of picking and choosing what you actually really want to work in. And if you're doing that, it's going to take a lot of pressure off of you mentally. So I think it's going to be easier to like stay consistent with it and kind of follow through with it. And if you're more consistent with anything, you're going to make more progress with it. If you are in a better place mentally with it, you're going to make more progress with it as well. So that's kind of how I go about it and how I kind of talk to people, work with people on it.
Yeah, I feel like my biggest struggle was always thinking this is the one way to succeed. If I don't do it this way, I might as well give up. And now shifting to, okay, I just want to eat like chicken breast and rice today. Like, can I have a healthy meal? And that makes all the difference, it seems like.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And when you're thinking about setting goals, like, what do you think is a good approach for people?
I think so much of it depends on the person. I think that I think people underestimate what they can accomplish in like a 6 months to a year period of time,
Mm,
but they
mm,
overestimate what they can accomplish in a month. And so I think the biggest thing that I see is like having a little bit of a longer term approach with stuff. And I think that's even something sometimes I struggle with or have struggled with like business side of things and kind of growing my brand even is like we as people want to make stuff happen like right away, which is kind of a blessing and a curse because it's good to have that urgency and like really want to push yourself. But you also got to think like, all right, is this what I'm going to be doing in 6 months? Or like, if I actually stick with this, like, where can I be in 6 months? So I think having, anyone can have any goal when it comes to fitness. Like, if you want to get a 6 pack, like, let's make it happen. But I think it's like actually realizing that it's going to take time and not getting so like stuck on if it doesn't happen in the next 1 to 2 months, like not giving up at that point in time. And so I think so much of it depends on the person, kind of where they're at, where their life is like. I think anything is possible for anyone. It really, really is. Like whatever fitness goal you have is for sure possible. It's a matter of how much time it's going to take. Are you willing to actually like be patient with the process and follow through with it? And I think that's the biggest thing.
and following the process, that's like really big, right? Because you really have to trust that what you're doing is going to pay off. What advice do you have for people who are struggling with motivation? They're struggling with the progress, seeing the weight on the scale. What would you tell those people?
Uh, that what happens when you stop trying. Like nothing happens if you aren't putting in any effort. So like if you've been putting effort in for a month and you're seeing no progress, like nothing is happening. Um, Two different things with that. It's like one, you have to keep going either way. So I think you got to get that out of your head, like just the ultimate giving up. Like you fail. That's cliche, but like you fail when you quit. Like you're gonna take steps back if you just like stop putting in any effort. So like regardless of whatever your emotions are, feelings are, like sure, take a couple days, get in your feels, do whatever you got to do, but then like you got to get back to it in some capacity. You got to keep putting in effort. So I think that's one thing is like got to keep putting in effort no matter what. And then two, like if it's been a month and a half, month and a half, and you're not seeing changes, then that something has to change. Then like it's all, especially with fitness and really anything. Like if you're not making progress and you actually are putting in like solid effort, then you're not doing something right. Respectfully, like something there's something in the equation has to be tweaked. Either maybe you need to put in more effort, maybe when it comes to nutrition, maybe it is like you're having too many calories on the weekend, or you're like not fully, if you're tracking calories, like not fully tracking everything, or workout wise, maybe it's starting to push yourself more in the gym and go up and weight a little bit more, like actually having a structured program or getting more steps in. So I think there's always something where it's like if you're actually putting your best foot forward, there's something that we can tweak. But I think regardless, it's like what happens if you stop putting in effort. You go backwards or you're not going to make the progress you want.
So let's say I've never been to the gym before. I've never been on a diet. I have no idea what I'm doing. What do you tell someone who's in that position who wants
Yeah.
to get more fit?
Yeah. I think one is like being patient with yourself, because I think with nutrition and workouts, there's so much of it that's like the skill you have to learn to actually like put it all together to make the progress you want. So it's like the skill of knowing what foods are higher protein and actually working those foods in on a regular basis, like the skill of tracking calories and actually like being consistent with that, the skill of like actually doing the compound exercises that help you lead to a lot of progress and actually like getting the form down and then like getting better over time. So I think it's like we'll still focus on like these main things. Like oftentimes when someone is kind of in that boat, like we'll focus on maybe it's just like tracking calories for the first time and like getting that down and like understanding like what foods have more or less calories, understanding portion sizes, and starting to set goals with that. And same thing with workouts. Like maybe it's, going to the gym 2 times a week and doing like 3, 4 exercises. And then we kind of just gradually build on that. And even like just like going for walks, like more walks on a regular basis, or even simply with nutrition, like cutting back on portion sizes of some of like the fun foods that you enjoy. I think those are like two very like simple things to kind of get the ball rolling, and then we can kind of build over time with that. But I think either way, it's like want to start with something that's like pretty attainable, but then always like keeping in mind like it takes time to get better with any skill that you start. And like once you actually like push yourself and get going with it, like you'll probably get a lot better very fast. But I think it's kind of overcoming that mental hurdle. Like, all right, I'm not going to be good with it right away, but as long as I kind of keep staying consistent, I will continue to improve, if that makes sense.
Awesome. And sort of shifting gears a little bit. So, a lot of the viewers of the podcast are sort of on the younger side. And I know in my journey, when I was trying to lose my weight and I was like near 300 pounds, I was, kind of lost, like, wasn't sure how I was going to achieve this goal. What advice would you give to younger people who don't necessarily know, they don't feel confident? And this could be with anything in life as well as fitness. What advice would you give them if you could give them advice?
Um, Honestly, I think the biggest thing is not being afraid to like look or feel dumb almost. Because I feel like when we're younger, we try to like do things that make us almost like fit in and don't really focus on our own goals. Like I know for myself, that was like one of the toughest things, even when I like started my own business. And even sometimes when I'm like trying to make progress, like losing fat and make progress on my own fitness goals, it's like, certain people are like going out drinking or like getting pizza or like whatever the case is, like it's either cutting back on it or sometimes you just have to say no. And even like when I was starting my own business, like I was 24 when I first was getting started with it. I had just turned 24, and for about a 6 month period of time, like I just stopped going out. I didn't do anything with friends. Like it was literally like I have to lock in right now, and then when I'm at a place where I feel more comfortable, then I'll kind of gradually do things with homies again and do things with people again. But I think that's a big thing is like prioritizing yourself first and foremost, because I think when you're younger we're always around our friends and always around people, we feel like we have to fit in. But as you get later in your adult life, you realize like no one really cares and we all have our own things we have to worry about. So I think the sooner you realize that and like focus on your goals first and foremost, then you can show up better for other people, in other settings as well.
And when you're on that journey, what standards did you have to hold yourself to stay successful?
I think having certain goals for yourself. Like I know for me, when I was starting my business, my first goal was to replace the income I was making from my finance job with like the fitness business. And so like I was grinding, like hustling as much as I could to like get to that point. And I think that's the biggest thing is just like having goals for yourself along the way. Because I think when I became complacent with fitness or with business, it's because I don't have like the next thing. Like I'll get to a certain goal, and like I think we as people are so powerful in that way. Where like when we put our mind to something and really put our like whole energy into it, like we can make anything happen. But then there's always like these different temptations, and then once you actually get to that point, you kind of get complacent, and, like fall off a little bit, or even just like staying consistent. Like you just get complacent at a certain point. So I think continuing to have like the next goal in mind when it comes to whatever it is. Obviously, you should enjoy, the success you have, whether it be a fitness, career or whatever it is. But I think that's the biggest thing that will help me the most is like, all right, I want to get to this point. Let's grind. Let's make it happen. Want to get to the next point. Let's grind, make it happen, and so forth.
Yeah, that's important. I think there's a saying that's like you can have the most well-built ship, but if there's no destination, then there's no use for it.
Facts.
What do you say, like in your life, were there any mistakes that you made or you saw other people make on your journey that you would like to warn people against?
um, Probably fitness, business, what just any of it.
Anything that
All
comes to
right.
mind. What speaks to you the most?
Man. I mean, probably what I just said as far
Yeah,
as
yeah.
like not having, not, actually, I'll say it like this. I think not being intentional with what you really want. I think people have like
Mm,
a general idea of like what they think they want to get to, but I think you have to like be very concrete in like where you want to get. Like, obviously, a lot of great things can happen when you're like on your journey and like going in a positive direction that you could have never expected. Like, there's many people I've met, many different experiences I've had that like I would have never known that would have happened. But like where I currently am is like I'm on a 6 week trip throughout Europe right now in the middle of that, and like running my business all remotely, all online, and like have built my business online and done it for the last 5.5 years, and have lived in like 4 different cities during that time. Like that was all because of like what I wanted to do, and like me
mm.
being intentional with how I built my business, how I operated, how I went about my time, the people I hung out with. I think that's the biggest thing, is like no matter what you want to accomplish, being super, super intentional about it. And like you got to believe it and like see it, if it's writing down your goals, where you want to be in a year, 5 years, whatever it is. I think you got to be very intentional with it for it to actually come to life.
Would you say that action without intention could even lead you down the wrong path or maybe ruin your progress?
Um, Not necessarily, but it kind of goes back to like what we were talking about with fitness, where it's like when people like start to, they generally want to make progress, but there's no real like intentionality behind it. Then I think that leads to people kind of getting burnt out, and it makes like when you're doing that, you're not really sure like what to change in the equation. Then, like if you're just like aimlessly like doing random shit, then like you don't. Yes, it can be helpful, and like you kind of get that habit down of like taking action consistently. But then I think it kind of leads people to being burnt out or like feeling bad about themselves if they're not like at a certain point, when it's like you just weren't going in any direction. Like, yes, you were doing some good things, but like you need to have some more like intention with what you're doing, I guess.
Mm. If you had one last piece of life advice, not related to fitness, but just in general, what would you leave our listeners with?
True. Life advice, man. Hmm. Uh, Life advice. I think you, me, we all are capable of a lot more than we give ourselves credit for. I think whether it be fitness, business, career, the kind of people we meet, traveling, like anything, I think we oftentimes in our head like hold ourselves back when like what we actually want to accomplish is a lot closer than we even think. Um, like again, with my business, a lot of things like have to happen, like kind of happen just by luck in a way. But I think when you are working hard and you are intentional and you are kind of pushing yourself, like you're capable of a lot more than what you think. Um, that applies with fitness. Like I think a lot of people could like have their body could look insane, but they don't believe in themselves, or not confident in it. They don't take the necessary steps. Same thing with any aspect of life. So I think like realizing like you are a lot more capable, and like whatever you want in this life, like for the most part, you can make happen.
Well said. And our tradition on the show is to ask, do you have any book recommendations for the listeners?
Yeah, so I've honestly only read like 3 books. This sounds horrible, but I've only read like 3 books the whole time I've been running my business, and really like since I got out of college, like 6 years ago. My probably favorite book that I like always go back and keep rereading is by, who Russ is, the artist, like the rapper,
Yeah, yeah.
Russ. So his book, it's called "It's All in Your Head." That is like my go to book. Like anytime I'm like kind of thinking about what I want to make progress in, or just kind of like a funky mindset with stuff, like I always kind of go back to that. That's my go-to.
Awesome. And where can people find you? How can people keep up with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So at GainsByPat on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, GainsByPat. I post a lot of content there pretty much every single day on Instagram and TikTok, YouTube. Um, I go through phases of YouTube. That's kind of the next thing I need to be a little more consistent with. But Instagram and TikTok is definitely the go-tos. And then I have a group fitness coaching program called Realistic Gain. So helping people lose fat in a realistic way. That's kind of like a little bit less expensive option, but still super, super helpful. And then we also have our one-on-one coaching. If you go to journeytogains.com, you can get information about that to help lose fat again in a realistic way, and kind of work with someone more direct and on a weekly basis to kind of hold you accountable, support you on your journey.
Awesome. And links to everything that Patrick mentioned will be in the description, as well as the book recommendations. So make sure you check out for that. Patrick, thank you so much for joining me. This was awesome.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.